Hey everyone, and thank you for joining my Substack podcast again, where we cover the most controversial of controversial topics. Today, I am delighted to have my friend and colleague Jenna Mclelland with us. She is an intactivist, which means somebody who is educating and helping others heal from male genital mutilation, which is euphemistically called circumcision. Jenna, thank you so much for your soul work in the world, for your mission, and for being here today.
Oh, Lauren, that's so kind. Thank you. And same right back at you. You're doing some incredible work, and to be here having another amazing conversation. I know we're going to create magic together. So I'm excited.
I am curious to hear what you'd say to people who they're just tuning on and they're thinking, one, this is going to be really uncomfortable information. I don't want to listen to it. Two, they might be thinking, this doesn't pertain to me. I'm a woman. I'm married to a circumcised or non-circumcised partner. Like I don't see what I can do differently with this information. Maybe they're a parent who's already circumcised their child. And so they're like, what am I going to get out of this? I'd rather not hear this information. Or they're a man who has been a child victim to this mutilation. And they might be thinking, well, what am I going to do different? Like, I've already been victimized. So, why would you say this information is important to any of those people to sit through and hear?
The first thing that comes to mind is right now, particularly, I feel like if you're listening in and you're like a follower of Lauren, you are already questioning the narrative. And when you can really remove any bias or notice where there's a space where there's a lot of taboo, and no, this is like the number one topic that nobody is talking about. Like we've gone so far from everything from the pandemic of vaccine and of medical deception and the school systems. I mean, we basically unveiled and were able to get that 2020 vision. But for some reason, circumcision is like the only space nobody is really looking into. For someone who is coming in as a little uncomfortable, any of these topics are going to be uncomfortable, and they are intentionally uncomfortable. So if you do have it in you to kind of pause and breathe and hold that discomfort in your body and feel it, and know that there is a greater mission waiting for you on the other side of this discomfort. We're lying a baby down, fresh out of the womb, and he is completely vulnerable. So his identity is completely connected to mom. There is no separation between him and mother. So we're laying him on a specific torture board where the imprint of a baby's body goes down on this plastic or a wooden device, and they Velcro him down. So even that, for me, already says in the somatics, this is enough. This infant that should be connected skin to skin contact with mother has now been taken away by a doctor or a nurse or an intern to have a part, the most sensitive part of his body, ripped off. As a mother, this is beyond or by far the most difficult truth to swallow when it comes to having have chosen to circumcise your son. There are a couple different things that are going to happen. There's going to be a protective shield, because having to take radical responsibility for that is, nobody wants to hurt their child. And we know what we know when we know it. So that's like the first step.
Mhm.
We know what we know when we know it. And usually these types of things happen when we choose to do them. It's a contract of some sort. That's how I like to think about it. That's what I tell mom. Like, listen, you had a contract with your son. And I know later, after you have chosen to circumcise, you're feeling all of the regret, all of the grief, and all the discomfort in your body.
And
Know that.
I want to clarify what we mean by contract. You and I are referencing what we would call a soul agreement, with the
Mhm.
understanding that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Both you and I have had personal experiences of knowing that our spiritual selves have agreed to certain experiences on planet Earth, on Earth School, to learn. And I just wanted to say that for some people listening, for example, if you come from a Christian background, that language might be like, what are y'all talking about? But I just want to clarify our terms here. That's what we
Yeah.
mean. It's a deeper soul awareness or soul agreement that goes beyond our human memory.
Yes, and these are very healing contracts. At least that's how I like to look at them. Although there may be some serious trauma, violation, or harm, on the other side of it, there is healing. There is a lesson. There is something that's going to help us evolve. And when mom can fully heal the grief that she has of having have recognized what has been done, and also the feelings of being duped, like that deep level of lie is just, I don't know, the rage. I honestly, I can't imagine.
Mhm.
So the level of importance of being able to take on that radical responsibility for self will not only heal you, but it's also going to heal your son and your relationship with him. So any man that may be listening that's been cut and has never really thought about that, what happens is when we are up until 18 months, we're in implicit memory. So in implicit memory, everything from emotion, somatics, everything is pretty much digested and imprinted and compounded into our nervous system. Right. So it is those deep undertone layers of subconscious data that is collected in the nervous system. So when something like this happens, there is a deep level of rage, abandonment, neglect, and not feeling worthy of protection. So there may be an experience where there have been times where your disconnect or distrust in your parental system can actually have been hijacked because of the circumcision itself, because you were essentially, or the baby was essentially attacked. Now, I don't say this in a way to like throw all this trauma like on everybody, right? Because it's, even though it is a trauma, and this is kind of where I get stuck, and perhaps like you can like we can talk through it. It's like I want to talk about the trauma. I want to talk about what happens. I want to talk about the damage to the brain, the damage to the psychology, to behavior, right? To the whole construct of development that really needs to happen. But because of such a severe shock of the pain, and the cortisol goes to death level numbers,
Mhm.
and it will stay in high cortisol for the next 90 days. So think about how a stress hormone that is connected to death, how that can really impact the development of an infant all the way up until adulthood.
We're
And what
talking
happened?
about trauma that changes the brain,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Eh,
they've done MRIs and brain scans to actually prove that the brain will never go back to baseline. The amygdala is completely damaged and distorted in certain areas where emotional regulation actually gets disrupted. So you'll notice, and I think there's this really big crisis with boys. A lot of boys are attention deficit, right? It's really hard for them to sit down, although like they are in indoctrination camps, right? Like it's in fluorescent light, so it's
Unfed
not
chemicals. Yes, there's a
right.
lot of factors.
Yes, exactly. So although there are other outside environmental type of factors that are affecting them, there also are some deep levels of emotional turmoil that will really create an uncomfortable and confused child. What
And
I've,
adults.
yeah, an adult.
That's where I'm looking at the crisis of masculinity in our world and thinking, how deep are these roots? And yeah, I wanted to say that up front in this interview. I'm sure we can go deeper into that concept. But when we're talking about a level of betrayal at the deepest level for baby boys, pain that changes the brain, trauma that changes the brain, trauma that goes unrecognized for most people. I mean, this is like, where's the Me Too movement
Yeah.
for this level of trauma for men? And so that's, it just gets heartbreaking. It gets soul wrenching.
Hmm.
And I do come from the paradigm that we have what it takes to heal everything, even if it's not in our consciousness right now. But the healing journey and the search for truth changes and opens our consciousness in such a way that then we can find the technology, the resources, and even the miracles that allow for unprecedented healing. So when we talk about, okay, this is trauma and pain that changes the brain for a lifetime, I want to counter, and I'm sure you do too, with, but we can come up with, we can discover and find healing modalities that will actually allow the brain to heal from this and the body to heal as well. We're going to cover that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's, the placebo um, effect, the nocebo effect, right? Like the power of our mind and the power of our consciousness and our ability to really believe that we can create deep levels of healing for something as severe as circumcision. And I believe and I live within that category of thoughts. And it is very difficult for a lot of people to really even comprehend that, because we do have this multi-layered degradatory type of system that has removed us from understanding this sovereign level of power that we have to heal. So I'm even curious the power mechanisms that have been dormant, that are currently dormant now. Like you said, like we don't, that can easily, through pulling a little bit more of these layers back and really getting to the remembrance of who we are, because we are ultimately creators. And as these creators, we are constantly creating our reality. So, in what way can I create some form of shift that's going to basically, it's almost like have our reality become malleable and malleable into the direction that we deserve, into the direction of our desire, and what we know that we can take on in our life. But we have to come out of the victim for a moment now, be the victim, feel it, get angry, do the somatic anger releases, whatever it is that needs to happen. Because once your eyes open to the devastation of what's really happening behind genital mutilation of newborn baby boys, I mean, 3,000 of them just today are being circumcised without pain medication.
And that's what's so important is we have to reclaim the language because we have been taught some Orwellian doublespeak. So just like with the word vaccine, no, it's not a vaccine, it's not a medication, it's a chemical injection. Why are we calling circumcision that? Why are we calling it a surgery or a medical treatment? What it is male genital mutilation. There would be, one, a lot of discomfort, but two, a cataclysmically faster consciousness shift around it if we started calling it what it was.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah, so
Exactly.
I think it's important that we use that term, as uncomfortable as it is. And I really want you to share the soul assignment. I think of it as a soul assignment where you were given this mission to illuminate male genital mutilation, what it is, what's happening behind the scenes, what are the really dirty political and financial influences at play as well, and you're helping people heal. Now, I before you share that, I just want to share the small shadow of your experience that I had spurred from something you shared on your Instagram. You had shared a video of a baby being cut, and I don't think you shared, or I don't think Instagram would allow the actual graphic content, but I heard the audio of that baby screams, and I was not okay for like 3 days. It hit such a deep place in my soul. And that's when I realized, okay, uh, like everybody to the forefront of this fight. I'm not a mother. I will never be a mother. I've never had that biological urge for kids, but there was something about hearing those cries that activated the most instinctual mama bear energy in my soul. And what I've heard from you is you had that, but like to the nth degree.
I still get extremely
Yeah.
emotional,
Yeah.
because just really taking a moment, because I had to go through my own mourning and my own grieving process. I was, gosh, I was working with women's sexual alchemy and teaching them alchemical practices and how to embody their sexuality in a way that allows the free flow of their sexual energy to move through the body so that they can find confidence, authenticity, and remove unhealthy blocks and trauma that are preventing them from really experiencing the life that they know that they desire, or getting to a place where they realize they deserve a beautiful life. And seeing that heartbreak and being one of those women, I was definitely one of those women. So when I went down the sexual healing journey, I healed from chronic asthma that I had since I was about 6. And I mean, I was on an inhaler. I was totally connected to the medical cults and being told I would never heal from this. This isn't something that you just manage and just keep coming to us, and we're going to do the same stuff to you every time. But there's not going to be a shift. Like, deal with it. So this was such a big point in my life where diving into my sexuality really started to shift my life and who I've become and who I am today. And it was in 2020, 2023. It was 2 nights before my 36th birthday. I had a dream where I was front row and center and a witness to a newborn baby boy being circumcised in a medical setting. It was so traumatic, so detailed. Like, I knew about circumcision in 2020. I was like, I ripped the Band-Aid and everything flooded in. And circumcision was one of them. And the first 2 men that I was ever with, they were uncut, they were intact. And I always thought it was just like really weird, but for some level, okay, well, everyone says it's better. I guess it's better. So when the baby looked at me, he penetrated my eyes and my soul in a way that I woke up and just was devastated, started crying, started moaning, squirming in bed. I was severely uncomfortable. This was like 3:30 in the morning, which is like peak celestial time. And finally got myself to sleep after I just went to bed pleading to God, please don't ever let me come back as a baby boy.
Mm.
I woke up in the morning, went to the kitchen, and collapsed in my ex-husband's arms and devastated, just hysterical. And it took over a week before I could share the dream in detail with someone without hysterically crying. So um, my reality completely bursted. And I had no idea what to do with this information. Like, how do you even talk about circumcision? Who is talking about this? Where do I go from here? And our common mentor, Brenda Pantango, is the first person I reached out to, one of them, and shared the dream to her. And she said, I think you need to consider this. This is actually a lot bigger than you. And that was a message sent from your angels. So sit with it, continue to grieve, and get back to me. So she and I ended up embarking on this really big journey together where she taught me how to remove it's an SRA. So circumcision is a satanic ritual abuse practice. And that has been camouflaged by this medical deception.
I want to put a little pin right here, like just so people can start to understand. At this point, we might have some listeners who are thinking, but it's in the Torah, it's in the Old Testament. I thought God commanded this. Anytime that there is blood sacrifice, it is demon related. It is satanic, even when that has been disguised as Judeo-Christian practice. And this is like on the forefront of my mind because I've been doing a lot of research around this right now, pagan roots of modern Christianity and things like that, like how it's gotten so woven in. But this is an important point for people who might think, well, didn't God command circumcision in the Torah or the Old Testament? No, no, that is a false teaching.
Yes. And so just one quick add on to that, because if you do actually look at circumcision, even in the Torah, even from a religious point of view, it is called the covenant of cutting.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
yes,
just that, and we'll leave it there. Just that itself is okay. There is this biblical religious text that is celebrating a covenant of cutting, of harming.
I mean, where's the foundational belief that our bodies are divinely created? I mean, if people understand the basic tenets of Satanism, which I have discussed in my last podcast on elite celebrity gender inversion, the basic uh, philosophy, theology of Satanism is to distort and conquer what God has already created, because that is their idea of spiritual liberation. So that's where we get mutilation. That's where we get things like plastic surgery and all this stuff shoved down our throats. People are swallowing it without questioning, where are these ideas coming from? This idea
Right.
of mutilating the body, and it's been so normalized. And male genital mutilation is one example. It's so normalized that we're not even supposed to talk about it. Like,
Yeah. So let's bring it back to biology for a minute to kind of weave that in and to make this just a little bit more stable. So if you look into the anatomical mechanics of the foreskin itself, the foreskin has the American Pediatrics Association, or some of the doctors have whispered that they do have backed science that the foreskin contains over 80,000 nerve endings, which is 10 times the sensitivity of the female clitoris.
mhm,
The foreskin also has specific cell receptors in it that are very specific to the area, that are connected and wired to the baby and to the man's brain. These allow the connection of the foreskin when it meets with the vagina, when in love, allows a chemical compound or a chemical cocktail to release in his body for bonding and for love. So, if we were to think even on an emotional aspect of allowing a man and a woman to deeply bond, to develop intimacy and sacred union, to feel that divine connection between one another, and to deeply dive into what it is to unite, to be one, because that's what sex is, right?
mhm,
Has been eliminated. So that capacity is no longer there, because even within the genitalia also have reflexology points,
mhm,
and the points of the glands where the foreskin also is covering of the penis. That's the heart of the man. So is the cervix. So the penis will again end up when he is in intercourse, it will connect with the cervix. So that is an initiation. That is the connection, the union that they're developing. So if now we've released or removed, amputated this beautiful piece, which I actually think is like the full blown reproductive body part, because a lot of people say it's just skin. You can't just call it skin because it is a highly advanced organ. A lot of people argue that it is an organ because of its different components and how the erogenous zones work and how it's a beautifully designed mechanism within itself. So even that statement within itself, and I have a lot of women who've mourned with me saying I will never get to experience this deep level of connection with my husband because that has been removed. And a lot of women suffer when they've actually gone down this rabbit hole of realizing not only is this impacting him, but it deeply impacts her. Because then all of a sudden through this, we're going to get with the heart of the man trying to protect himself, because the last time that he was really intimate and vulnerable, he was attacked and a part of his body was ripped off. So erectile dysfunction, impotence, and premature ejaculation are unfortunate byproducts of what is going on and how it is distorting our sexuality. So you mentioned earlier there's this inversion, there's this distortion. So if we are completely distorted, disconnected, removed, and disembodied in our sexual nature, which is our ability to co-create, our ability to be like God and create life, then that is the pinnacle to me of really hijacking the family unit and the human being in this 3D Earth school. That's it.
what we're talking about is global dysregulation of relationships and divine union. That's what I'm hearing from your message.
Yeah.
When men have been, on some level, severed from their heart connection, and the level of emotional wounds and scars that leave, even if they might be invisible to the naked eye, that's there. And then what you're saying is men are impacted, then women are impacted because the potential for that true connection is short circuited. And now I don't want to say it becomes impossible because, like I said, I think it's possible to heal from anything and everything. And what you and I have talked about too is here's where tantric practices could come in, that it's a different, higher perspective of sexual union that allows a deeper flow of love and bringing in of the divine love into the bodies. But yeah, what we're talking about is wow, could this be a big piece with men not feeling safe in relationships, not showing up in relationships, women not feeling safe in relationships, women not getting the masculinity that they're longing for. Because on one side of the spectrum, women didn't fulfill their highest spiritual role for men, meaning mothers and sons. And so it's a big picture question to explore right now.
Yeah, and trauma begets more trauma. So it is pretty easy for a cut man to feel like, oh, what happened to me? I'm totally fine. Like it didn't really affect me. My wife has no idea, but women are starving for intimacy. We are desperate. We are so desperate that we choose toxic masculinity. We choose weak masculinity, or we just like, we don't even like, there's like an epidemic of women that are actually more single now than they've ever been because a lot of them who have up leveled and healed are like, I'm not. I'm not dating any of this. Like, I am much happier in my own center, in my own space, creating what I want to create without having to deal with someone who doesn't know how to handle their emotions or they haven't healed. Now, you can be a really healed man, but if you have been circumcised, that is the deepest layer. To me, that's the core, that's everything. And how does that impact society? Like, how is that affecting our behavior and our responses and the inability to communicate and the fear and why we're bickering? And it's like everyone truly, and part of my friends, we're all like, women are underfucked. Like, we don't really know our bodies. We're not getting what we want from men. And men are really confused because women are asking of them a lot, but they don't know how to go inside because they've been conditioned not to.
Well, I think it's really an interesting point that you and I, women, are bringing this conversation to the forefront in some ways. Like, I understand there are men who have been educating about this, there are male support groups for it. But what I see is it is the feminine energy which is drawing humanity towards love. The feminine energy is what spurs humanity to evolve because it leads in the spiritual realm. So, okay, men get to lead in the physical realm, but is that actually leadership? Because true leadership is the movement towards love and higher evolution. And that is more prevalent in feminine energy. Again, for people listening, the differentiation here is men and women have masculine and feminine energy within us. Typically, like, this is just very simplified, but very typically, women are going to have more feminine energy, feel healthier and more balanced when they're operating from their feminine energy. Men are going to have more masculine energy and feel healthier and more balanced operating there. But this is where I think women are at the helm by identifying the unidentified trauma, by illuminating the potential for healing that is outside of the visible eyes. It's We see it with our spiritual eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And we have that deeper longing for more. That is a more love, more connection. That is a uniquely spiritual energy, feminine energy impetus. And so, yes, of course, we're gonna be leading this. Like, no, men, there is healing here. There is more connection between us that can happen. And we need to look at the dark stuff in order to get to that healing, but it's going to be worth it because the rewards and the love potential is going to be immeasurable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're reminding me of what one of my coaches and mentors has been telling me lately is what happens is we can get so much into this toxic um like hopefulness where we're constantly, oh, these positive vibes, and oh, like in the future this isn't going to be a thing, or oh, in my next relationship it's going to be so much easier. But what happens is, although that is definitely a really good way to live life, but then it becomes toxic because it prevents us from actually pausing and allowing ourselves to see what you just said, the shadow and what's happening. So I think that's just like what a lot of it is. And I can only imagine people are just like, that was a horrible relationship and not really taking accountability for the things that everything's just going to get so much better in the next one. It's like, well, that's why there needs to be this pause and this deep digestion of really having deep honesty, radical honesty with self. And yeah, like just to your point, really being with it and taking the time to maybe just consider. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you can start the healing process if you've been cut. There are a lot of different ways that women can reconnect with their partner and really support them in this type of healing process, because it's, again, they're going to be the deepest thing. I actually, and I'm come to think of it in this moment, maybe it's birth trauma. But I wonder if men having circumcision is like the lowest type of trauma, or like the most dense, the biggest trauma that really does exist in the human body.
That makes
Truly.
sense. It makes total sense to me. Is there
Yeah.
anything
It's,
more traumatic than being, as you say, strapped down to a sexual torture board and like the risk of castration, which is what the psyche must be interpreting that as, plus the largest betrayal trauma of their life. Just all of that compounded. Yes, we need to look at this. Yes, this is valid trauma that is impacting everybody in all the relationships. Like, this is huge.
yeah,
And
it's innocence,
yeah,
right? Free from sin, free from guile. And that trust that you take on, you were just created in a womb, and you crossed over the gateway here.
yeah,
And then before you know it, you're laying down fluorescent lights, this whole getup is around you, different weird smells are kind of coming in, and you're being attacked, and you thinking, literally thinking you're about to die,
yeah,
that
yeah.
fresh, without having any form of development. Because a lot of people, I've had people say, well, Jenna, I just don't think it's fair to say that all these babies have trauma, because I know guys that have been in the military, and they've had their arms like, blown off for all this stuff. And I don't tell them that they have all this trauma. I'm like, well, they made that choice knowing the consequences as an adult man to go into to war or to combat. You can't even compare the two of any of these things, because this is completely, like, this is non-consensual.
Absolutely. There's a totally different level of cognitive awareness when we're talking about an adult and an 8-year-old baby. I mean, an 8-day-old baby.
Yeah.
Now, I want to get into some of the practicalities of healing. And first, I want to address this question of the scientific research on cutting, because when I have done a cursory exploration of some meta-analyses in quote reputable, which means a bunch of liars, medical journals, right? So,
Yeah.
okay, thank goodness everybody who's going to be listening to this, who's a long time follower of mine, they have the basic awareness that medical science is bought and paid for. We've seen this with everything from cigarettes way back in the day to vaccines to every single kind of pharmaceutical.
DDT.
DDT, exactly. When there is money at play, the science is bought and paid for. Okay, so how could this be possible with cutting? I want to talk about the financial influences. I want to talk about why is, when people research, are there risks to circumcision? They might get articles that say, No, there's no higher rate of erectile dysfunction in cut men versus uncut men." Or what I've seen is cut men have a slightly lower risk of penile cancer, or their female partners have a slightly lower risk of ovarian cancer. Okay, so then we get into cancer statistics, which I've talked about as well. But what would you say to that?
So circumcision was introduced to the United States in the late 1800s during the Victorian era. And by a lot of, well, one specifically everyone mostly talks about is John Harvey Kellogg, the man that makes cornflakes and the cereal that children are eating that are incredibly toxic. He had a huge anti-masturbation campaign, and realized that removing the foreskin would not create an animalistic type of boy behavior. He believed that children that were sexual were inherently rotten and evil. So he became this pseudoscientist. He had like this like huge, crazy like a healing center, and he would recommend people have 11 to 15 enemas a day. And he wanted parents to tie their children to beds and circumcise the boys, remove the foreskin, sew it shut, or pour carbolic acid on little girls' clitorises to burn them off. Because a child removed from carnal desire is more likely to study the Bible. There were a bunch of other doctors that came in and realized a huge financial incentive. So they started saying that circumcision cured epilepsy, bedwetting, specific types of like autism, which actually, if you really study it, it does actually contribute to autism. And why is autism and SIDS more common in boys?
Mm.
So just sit with that.
Mhm.
And because there was such this financial incentive, but then there was like this element of morale, right? Like, oh, we all believe in the Bible, we all believe in Christianity, and we're good, clean people. So we're going to do something, and I'm doing it with this morale of actually protecting family and removing children from actually connecting to their genitalia, which is sinful.
Mhm.
So because of this financial decision, and it's like even in vaccines, right? There's always like the measles, and then there was
Polio.
polio,
Yeah.
not my diet, polio, and different things. You'll start to see there's these interesting seasons where they say that this vaccine is going to help. Same thing with circumcision all the way up until the 90s.
And my understanding is that today there is financial incentive for doctors. Of course,
Yes.
performing a surgery is
Mm.
lucrative. And who is educating the doctors about the harms of male genital mutilation? Like, where's the money for that? It's like, where's the money for nutrition training in medical school? It's not there. There's pharma money. And then also there is the selling of the foreskins. Can you talk about that?
Yes. So there's a huge price tag on these babies' backs, essentially. And the parents have no idea that they end up saving the foreskin, and it's being purchased by the beauty industry, or they're saving it for burn units. So it's the fibroblasts within the foreskin. It's very heavily rich and potent in fibroblasts. And fibroblasts are the stem cells to connective tissue, to skin, to cartilage, to bone, to muscle, whatever it is within the connective tissue. So it is, you can really pretty much create whatever it is. And so people want to create better skin with these fibroblasts. So then when you can kind of think about more of the dark evil portion, women who are cutting their children are putting tortured infants, baby boys, foreskin on their face, all in the sake of beauty. And I love how you talk about the beauty industry and Botox, and everything is just this transhumanism type of weird inverted cult. But at the same time, rather than this being like a transhumanism, well, this is just barbaric, this cannibalistic, perhaps.
I think that could be an appropriate word for it. There is a viral clip of Sandra Bullock on Oprah
Mm-hmm.
talking about what she uses for her skin. And she says something like, quote, it's a skin cream made from the foreskin of Korean baby boys. She
Mm-hmm.
says this on TV.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a $6 billion industry. So the beauty industry is getting like all of this luscious money, all
You're
cash.
saying the foreskin industry is 6 billion.
Yeah. Or more. I mean, some people have even quoted it to be much higher, because not only do we have the beauty, we have the procedure itself, we have the tools, we have the cosmetic fixes. Let's say, for example, a glans, because it's very common for there to be a botched circumcision. So any type of remediation towards fixing a gone bad circumcision. And then we have lubricant, because the foreskin actually is it keeps the glands of the penis moist and lubricated. So like we should not be using lube. And women are not the only ones who should be creating and contributing to it. And so when the foreskin is removed, the glands in the shaft will start to crack and get really dry. And over time, it will callus and keratinize, which is the same material as your fingernails.
So
So
desensitization.
completely,
Mm-hmm.
hence impotence,
Mm.
erectile dysfunction. A lot of men tell me that, imagine having sex with a kitchen glove on. Some can barely even feel it
I
because of the wear and tear.
I read the book you recommended on your Instagram. It was by a Jewish doctor who was impelled from his own cultural religious practice to look into circumcision. What's his name? What?
His name is Dr. Kenneth Littman, and he actually was started the book to write a pro circumcision book, but couldn't.
And what's the book called again?
It's called Circumcision: How a Ancient Ritual Became a Questionable Surgery.
Okay. Yeah, we both highly recommend that one for those
Highly.
listening, highly. And in one portion of the book, he shared the experiences of teenage boys who were circumcised as teenagers. And it was, again, just, I don't know if my soul has recovered. One boy described it as before masturbating felt like it was in color, like color TV, and afterwards he described it as black and white TV.
Yeah.
And just heartbreaking. I mean, I think both you and I also might be compelled towards this activism because you and I have, well, I don't know if you have a background of sexual trauma, but you were talking about your journey of sexual healing. I have a background of sexual trauma, and sexual healing has been a big part of my own healing journey. And what I realized was that for me, and I would generalize this, although it's okay if people disagree, but I've come to the conclusion that where toxic male sexuality has harmed, there is where healthy male sexuality can heal. I think that is part and parcel. And so, women, if we have experienced sexual trauma, we can actually benefit by helping men reclaim their own sexual healing and sexual well-being that will come back to us in very profound ways. And I've talked about the depth this healing went for me in my book, The Invisible Corset, Break Free from Beauty Culture, in my book, The Scorpion and the Lion. But just my basic understanding of, nobody told me that when I went to this level of sexual healing with male partners after being so, terrified and hurt by men, I started releasing trauma in a way that I don't know how it would be possible any other way. Like just trauma being purged from my body. And I thought, why is nobody telling women this? That
Yeah.
this is like worth 20 years of therapy. But it takes men who are healthy in their sexuality. And if this trauma is in place, are we going to get there? We're all in this healing together.
Yeah, you have to think of the man. So I think his consciousness, his truth, everything is in his genitalia. So you take this onto a metaphysical level, it makes it when there's been this ripping, this amputation of a part of his masculinity, it will make it difficult for him to ejaculate his dreams into the universe, to ejaculate his purpose and his intention. So if there's this block and there's been this crazy shock and trauma to his system and an actual removal, then there will be all these different distortions making it really difficult for him to feel safe. And so I think the power of women is to nurture, is to support, and to spiritually lead, and to also love. So a lot of women are, because they suffer from their own disembodiment and their own sexual shame, it's no wonder that we're all disconnected and we're cutting children. Or it's no
Totally.
wonder that we're laughing at men and emasculating them for their penis size and
That's such a
laughing
good
at each
point.
other's genitalia. Yeah,
We as women collectively could only do that to show how disconnected we are. Like that,
exactly.
wow, I'm just putting two and two together. Thank you for sharing
Exactly.
that.
Yeah, exactly. Because a lot of these men that I speak to, they're just like, women are horrible.
Mm.
And what they've said to us, and how hurtful it is, and how they've laughed at me, and how I just don't. I tell them about how upset I am about my circumcision, and like I'm devastated because there's people who want to kill themselves. This is not like, oh, here we are talking about some controversial topic. No, men want to die. And women aren't really capable, because they're not capable of being with themselves. They're not capable of offering those beautiful, divinely, um, like characteristics of who we
Mm-hmm.
are to support and to lead in the spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
So men can harm us, men can attack us. That's their strength over us. Ours, we know how to use our word to tell them something that will be like a blade and just slice them on the stomach. That's how we protect ourselves. So we're doing that to them because I mean, there's like a multi-dimensional ways in which like we're doing it because of our trauma. And we're also just so angry at them. I'm like, wake up sometimes. So the frustration in this war that I see between masculine and the feminine and men do this, it's just like, we have to come home to ourselves first. And then we can get into relationship, and then we can call in the person that's going to treat us the way that we know that we deserve, or the one that is going to up level with me.
Mm-hmm. We are all in this healing together. That is the divide and conquer tactic, and that has been used against us to keep humanity suppressed. And I really feel like we're at this consciousness breaking point. And this conversation has certainly shown that when we can heal together, we can break levels of generational trauma. And here's where I want to get, we have a few minutes left. I want to get into some practical steps of healing for women in relationship with men who have been victimized by men, for healing for men who have been victimized themselves, any kind of additional emotional healing you'd recommend. What is a basic protocol and further steps?
For men, we'll start with men first. For men, it's just if you are already aware, but you've been silent and you've never had someone to validate your experience, find a community. I have created a free community actually where we get together on Sundays and we just validate, because this is lonely. It's lonely. Not that many people want to wake up to it. And when they do, they don't have that many people to talk about it with. Like, this whole journey for me was very lonely and isolating. So find someone to talk and validate. That's like step one. That's a great healing. That's like, take your exhale, and everything that you're feeling is completely normal. And once you feel ready, because a lot of rage, a lot of anger is going to start to come, because that's a boundary. And underneath boundary crossing is deep anger and rage. And so, what are the ways that you can start working with that? How can you maybe look at your lifeline a little bit and maybe start to notice little patterns, and slowly maybe start journaling, just like slow, different types of things that you can start doing. You can also work with me on a deeper level of actually creating a curriculum that helps you somatically release. And so I also work with scar tissue remediation, and I help create more sensitivity where you actually do it. I just give you the tools that I have. You're the healer, not me. And to remediate the glands to get more moisture and malleability and nerve connections to fire again. And working on the scar tissue itself, that is the ring around the shaft, is also going to be incredibly healing. There's a lot of different like somatic mapping that can be done too, to reclaim your genitalia, to reclaim other different parts of the body, because a lot of the shock is still harboring deep down in your root and in your root chakra.
And
That's survival.
somatic mapping, can you give a definition of that?
Yeah, so somatic, like a sexual mapping, would be genital mapping. So there is a process where you can do this alone, or you can do this with a practitioner or a facilitator. It just depends on how you want to do it. And you go step by step through every single part of your penis, and all the way from the testicles and all the way up on different layers, touching, palpating, massaging, just really connecting on different layers to see where there's sensation and where there isn't. Maybe there's something you're touching and it might be bringing out an emotion, staying with that, being with that. And then even considering in erotic embodiment practices, how are you pleasuring yourself? A lot of men who have been cut, they don't realize it, but they actually become more prone to masturbating much more than an intact man, because there's this energy of escapism, and it's kind of a running away from, and there's in this inability to be completely satiated. So if you have not healed the emotional part, and then you start working with a more holistic sexual embodiment practice, a lot of men get really rough, and they'll want the skin to grow back. And then there's foreskin restoration, which is a whole nother process of actually working with the fibroblasts that are still available in any leftover foreskin that may have been left behind from amputation. And you can work and actually grow new skin tissue that will eventually move past the coronal ridge, which is like the mushroom cap, and you'll start to get a coverage. And that coverage will allow for a psychosomatic energy of feeling contained and less exposed and less vulnerable. So you're going to allow yourself to feel a lot safer in your environment, because even that removal subconsciously creates this level of exposure and feeling unsafe just because the glands is exposed and open.
That makes total sense.
Right?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does.
So,
As within, so without on so many
yes.
levels. All right,
Yes.
I want to share a link to your Sunday group that you mentioned, your support
Mm-hmm.
group. I'll share a link to, you have a website where you have your information on personal coaching. I also want to share a link to the book we discussed on circumcision by, what's his name again? Uh,
Oh, Dr. Kenneth Lippman.
by Dr. Kenneth Lippman. Is there any other resources we
I
should
have a
mention now?
YouTube channel. I have a
Okay.
YouTube channel. You can follow me on Instagram. And if you would like to book a clarity discovery call with me, I can also put my Calendly link on there, and you can see my schedule, or just even put my email, pop my email in, shoot
Okay.
me a message. I'm usually available, and it's a really, really beautiful journey that we get to go on together. Yeah, it's incredible. So
You
I love
you
this work so much.
I can tell this is your heart and your soul is in this work, and it is contagious and it's activating and it is very confronting at times. Like I said, it took me 3 days to recover from hearing that baby cry. And that is what we have to be willing to do to get to this beautiful global healing that I do believe is on the other side.
Sam, it's already happened.
It is, it's here, it is here.
It's here.
Whew. Well,
We've
Jenna,
arrived.
we have. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we close off?
No, Lauren, it's just such a pleasure. Thank you so much for talking with me. And there's just still so much to cover. So I will see if maybe I'll invite you onto my podcast next time and we can continue the conversation.
I'd love to do that. A part two. We can go.
Yeah.
We'll have
Yeah.
so much to cover.
Yeah,
Thank you so
definitely.
much, Jenna.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you too.